highly regulated, thanks Brian's filming me, that's great. We operate in a highly regulated industry, dealing with hundreds of regulators around the world. And obviously, working with all that regulation has a massive impact on how we operate IT and deploy it in the bank. So why automate? Well, we're at the Chef Summit, so I'm guessing we're all engaged in automation. But for us at the bank, there are a couple of key things. So we want to reduce the amount of time it took to provision resources, remove away the manual approvals and controls with security, and also reduce the amount of cost in wasted man hours and unused VMs. And ultimately, improve the lives of the developers who are having to deal with that day in and day out. So, our challenge. Excuse me. How do you give application teams the freedom and flexibility to do continuous deployment using AWS, Terraform, and Chef in a highly regulated, restrictive, and security-focused environment? There's quite a lot there. I'll tell you how you do it. You give application teams full autonomy over their code, servers, and how they deploy their infrastructure. Now, to some of you, that might not seem like such a big deal, but Barclays is a bank, and like I said, we operate in a highly regulated industry, and giving that level of control to hundreds of application teams represents possibly quite a big risk to the bank. And that risk can take the shape of hundreds of thousands of Barclays customers being affected by outages, financial penalties from regulators, which could run into the millions, and then just also reputational risk to the bank, which is quite important to us. So how do we mitigate that risk? And how do we, at the same time, provide a development environment that's free and flexible for our application teams to do the development in, without locking down the Chef development process to the point where it's difficult to use and inefficient? And how do we satisfy our audit and security teams within the bank that the right checks and balances are in place? InSpec. A massive advert for Chef there. InSpec is how you do it. So what we did was we took InSpec and we put it at the heart of our CD framework, the CD toolkit. So before we go into that, I'd like to just give you some background on some of the things that in the bank, like namely our Chef architecture. So we're using, each application team has a single repository for their Chef code, and we're using the role cookbook structure to manage that code. The role cookbook structure is there to help us get around versioning cookbooks in shared environments. And if you want to know more about it, Kimball's really good at explaining it. He'll give you a nice document to read if you want to know about it. We also have our own internal supermarket. We don't source anything from outside the bank because we have to be absolutely sure how software is deployed. So we have our own library cookbooks that we write. We do pull cookbooks in from the community, which we rewrite to Barclays standards. But all our library cookbooks are written with the security enforced within them. And I don't know if anybody here in the room is doing anything like that, but when you enforce security and regulation in your cookbook, it makes it quite complex, and it also can make it quite difficult for people to use. So we have that problem. The CD toolkit. So basically, the CD toolkit is our framework that we built. It comprises of a bunch of components that allows application teams to interact with Chef, Terraform, and AWS in a secure and controlled way. And what you can do with the CD toolkit is, if you're an application team, you can use TeamCity or Jenkins in the bank, and you can construct your own CD pipelines, custom CD pipelines. You can also take a pipeline off the shelf, like the one there, just a standard one, and bolt it onto the back of your CI process, if you don't want to go through the hassle of doing that. So I'd like to just take a moment to just introduce you to my son, Cass. The study's just chilling there in the back of the car with his sunnies on. This does relate back to InSpec, so just bear with me. So just like, I made that. I fulfilled my purpose as a human being. That's serious. I represent Barclays. Cass is your average 2-year-old toddler. He's naturally gravitates towards anything dangerous or potentially life-threatening. And obviously this causes a lot of concern for his parents, myself and his mom. So for our sanity and for his safety, what we've done is we've toddler-proofed our entire home. So Cass can happily cruise around from room to room, playing with his favorite toys, any which way he likes, without us worrying that he's going to hurt himself or break anything of value in the house. So how does this relate back to InSpec? So InSpec is basically toddler proofing for us. So it's the equivalent of toddler proofing your house. And what we do is I'm not saying that our developers are toddlers. Like far from it. We work with some really smart people at Barclays. So come work at Barclays. It's cool. No, but like Cass, they're not fully aware of all the risks and regulations that when it comes to deploying infrastructure. And it's up to us to create that safe environment for them to be able to do their development and without stifling their creativity and ingenuity. So we do this with InSpec, and we use InSpec profiles to set up very clear boundaries of how cookbooks can be used and how infrastructure can be deployed. And then we take those profiles and we implement those boundaries in key stages in the CD pipelines, which gives us our checks and balances. So I'd like to just talk about the relationship we have between InSpec profiles and library cookbooks before we move on. So we have our library cookbooks in our internal chef supermarket. And I hope the guys at Chef, I hope you like what I've done with your logo there. I bet you never thought you'd see that, Kimball. Right. But yeah, so we have our library cookbooks in the chef supermarket, and each library cookbook has a corresponding InSpec profile. And we store this profile in a Git repo and stash, and only select individuals have access to edit those profiles. So that would be like our security and audit teams, and the cookbook authors. And then if an application team or developer wants to include that profile in their tests, they can access it through an API that we built, and then they can put it in their test kitchen or however they want to pull those InSpec tests and those profiles in. So let's take a look at this from the application team or developer's point of view. Okay, so and how you would use this. So say he wants to deploy his web app, and he decides that he's going to use Apache to do this. He goes to the supermarket, internal supermarket, and he looks at the Apache cookbook. And then he creates a wrapper cookbook and puts it as a dependency in his wrapper cookbook like we have there. And then he goes and he hopefully reads the README. Who reads READMEs in cookbooks? Everybody should put their hand up. Okay, yeah. Trying to get developers to read READMEs is difficult. But if they don't read it, then they can go and look in Stash, where we have all the InSpec profiles, and they can find the corresponding profile for this cookbook. They can then go to their test kitchen, go into their code repo, open up the kitchen YAML file, set InSpec as the verifier, and then put the link their suite to that profile. Cool. So, with few steps, the developer is now ready to develop his wrapper cookbook. And he's in a position where he knows exactly where the boundaries are of how you can use that cookbook. And he can go, he can either just run a test and see it fail, or he can actually go look at the profile and see what the controls are. So for us, this is like quite a big deal because we have so much regulation and so many ways, and it's so prescriptive how you have to deploy the code. It's quite difficult for our developers to kind of know what to do. So this kind of gives them at a very early stage, exactly what they should do, and that's kind of comforting. I find that kind of comforting. It also allows them to fail. I don't really like using that word early in the development process, like an opportunity for success. I think maybe see their tests pass early in the development process. So he can just get on with it, and as he's writing his wrapper cookbook, he can run his tests and see where he's passing or failing as he's going along. So kind of like test-driven development, right? What this ultimately enables is faster development, because like Adam and Kimball were talking about yesterday, we're putting this, the compliance checking right at the beginning of the development phase. We're not putting it later on down the line when he's coming to push his code into the chef server, or even worse, like deploying something in production, and having to go back and refactor all his codes and make it, meet that compliance. So for us, this is quite a huge step. So let's look at implementing those boundaries. Okay, so we've got this is like mega bog standard CD pipeline here. A couple of stuff you probably recognize in there, but the first part of this is the most important part for us, and that's the chef. We call it the chef publishing part. And what this does is, and I'm sure many of you are using this to push your code into your chef servers, but what this does is basically tests, it verifies and tests your code, and then does your integration tests and your test kitchen and compliance checking, manages your dependencies, and then ultimately uploads your cookbooks and your roles. So the part we care about is the integration tests and your compliance checking there. Right? So that's what we're going to look at. So when this job runs, it uses the kitchen YAML file in the chef repo of the application team, and it uses that to run its integration tests. So it goes there, checks it, and clicks off test kitchen to do a full kitchen test. And it uses the InSpec profiles included in the suite there to do its compliance checking. So that's cool, right? Yeah, but what if the application team or the web developer forgets to put some of those profiles in there, right? Is it going to go through? Well, we have some code in the background, and I think Ian wrote this over there. So if you have any questions about that, Ian, put your hand up. I told you I'd call you out. So what it does is it basically scans the code repo and scans all the cookbooks metadata files, and it looks for dependencies, dependent cookbooks, and then checks which of those dependent cookbooks are library cookbooks, and then it does a check in the kitchen YAML file if the associated InSpec profiles for those library cookbooks have been included. If they haven't been included, or if any are missing, the job fails and the application team is notified that there are missing profiles. So you can see there's that gate's immediately there, nothing leaves the code repo until it passes compliance, which is pretty cool. But also, if any of the tests fail, if all the profiles are there, it fails again, nothing gets out, and the application team is alerted. So let's look at the boundaries in action. When I did this presentation internally, no one got this. So I have to educate the people on my team. So let's look at examples. So our web developer is ready to go. He's run all these local tests, and also we generate our repos for our teams. We have a repo generator, and it puts in a rake file in there which has all the tests that that chef publish job would run. So when they're running their test, they're running exactly the same tests the pipeline's going to run, so there's no ambiguity there. So he's done all his testing, his code analysis is all cool, his unit testing is good, InSpec is passing, he's compliant, getting green all over the place, he's stoked, he's going for it. So he commits to deployment branch, kicks off the CD pipeline. CD pipeline goes, scans all the cookbooks, checks for metadata files, checks for library cookbooks, checks for InSpec profiles are there. They're all there. Cool, runs the compliance tests. They pass, upload. Great. InSpec profiles are missing, fails. InSpec tests fail, fails. Application team is notified and the pipeline fails. So for us, this is like quite a major step, and this is how we used InSpec to solve a very big problem for us in getting automation in the bank. So I hope that kind of helps you guys with some of the problems you might be having. But I'd like to just talk about now how we're using InSpec beyond Chef. I don't mean like leaving Chef behind, but like using it to do other things. So the bank is in the process of moving into AWS, and this is quite a big deal for us. And there's a lot of like scrutiny around it, like more so than we've ever had with any other product. And we have a lot of controls that need monitoring. So when we were looking at a tool that could help us with this, InSpec came up, and it became the obvious choice in the end. And that was mainly because of its extendability, is to be able to just connect to an API, pull data back, and then manipulate that data into a way that InSpec could then use, and also just for its ease of use. Because ultimately, we don't want like coders to be checking this. We want our auditors to be able to read this stuff. So that's why we chose InSpec. And what we're basically doing, or what we're basically using InSpec to check, is that we have our infrastructure team create accounts for our application teams within AWS, and they're created to a certain baseline, and they're given to that team, and then those teams have the ability to change those accounts. And what we're using InSpec to do is to scan those accounts for any deviation from our compliance base and report back on that. So InSpec is going to be like a major part of us getting into the cloud. So no pressure there, for me at least. I don't know if any of you guys have seen the InSpec AWS Git repo. It's a bit light on resources. And I don't mean that as a criticism. I think it's cool that we've built this into InSpec, that we can do this. But we need a lot more. And we're partnering with OpsCode to build those resources out. And we're hoping that, I think we have agreement that we're going to contribute those resources back to the community. So hopefully you guys will be able to get some use out of that too. Cool. So what's the future of InSpec at Barclays? Well, it's going to be a core part of our CD going forward. It's going to remain that way. And I think it's only just going to gather more momentum there as people become used to using it. We're going beyond Chef, and like I've said with AWS, I've shown that there, but we're also looking at other places to use InSpec. We're already having conversations with other parts of the bank, the VMware guys, as an example, and other people, where they're seeing InSpec as a way to solve a lot of their compliance issues. So everyone we've managed to show it to is excited about it. If we could just get to show it to more people, it would be great. We want to move away from writing these very restrictive cookbooks that we have and focus more on the InSpec profiles. So what we'd like to see is the test-driven development kind of approach to this. So where you have ultimately, and we're still talking about this, but ultimately you let the community within the bank write their own cookbooks, and you have security and audit focus on creating the InSpec profiles and showing you how you can deploy infrastructure, or restricting you how you can deploy infrastructure in the bank. And we're hoping that would create better cookbooks ultimately for people to use. Our next big thing is going with Chef Automate and specifically compliance to increase our visibility in production. And we've seen the demos, like it looks like a powerful tool. We don't have anything like that at the moment. With the huge estate that we have, you know, this would be a huge game changer for us. So we're actively exploring that now. Aspirationally, we'd like to become industry leaders in using InSpec and, you know, help forge the way InSpec is developed and used, and in turn contribute back to the community when we're doing that. So that's just an overview of how we're doing things with InSpec at Barclays, and you know, we'd just like to thank the guys at Chef for all their support and also for producing such amazing tools that have enabled us to do such cool stuff in the bank. So, like I said, I've gone quite high level with a lot of this stuff. If you have some questions now, please talk, but you can also come speak to me, Brian, and other Ian. We operate in pairs in the bank. And we're happy to share with you anything. So, any questions? Oh, yeah.
Is there a reason you separate the InSpec profile from the library cookbook rather than?
Yeah, so we did that because we wanted to have more than just, we wanted to have a secure place where multiple teams could edit those profiles. And we thought Stash would be the easiest place to control that access. And also we wanted to be able to combine profiles outside of the library cookbooks to create other profiles and things like that. So, anybody else?
What is the portion of your development teams that use InSpec right now?
Well, we're at the early stages of this still. So we've had some, I don't know the number, but we're starting to get more and more people involved in it. Like the AWS part, because this is mainly focused on going into the cloud. So we're not production ready in the cloud yet, like I said before, because we need to put this, but we're hopefully going to be production ready. I don't know if I can say this, like probably before the end of the year. So I got an email about that. There's resources coming in.
I've got, I represent some of the app teams and people that I work with.
Hello.
So I represent like some of the app teams on this. And some of the people that I've been working with, I'm preemptively trying to get them to build this into their practices so that when they flip the switch, they can actually use all of this stuff like really, really, truly in production. They're going to already be using it on day one.
So I don't know how long we have for questions.
Like a minute or so. Okay, yeah.
Cool, okay. Well, thanks very much, guys. And come work at Barclays.